Soft skills for notaries public, because sometimes the best soft skills win. By yours truly, Brenda Stone, blogger at Notaries and NotaryNews.com. What are soft skills? Well, a few years ago, I received an email that said something about soft skills. And I'm a country girl. I'm not fancy. And I don't know everything, so I decided I'd better get on board and learn exactly what soft skills were. What my research turned up is that the term soft skills is a noun. It means personal attributes that enable someone to interact effectively and harmoniously with other people. In other words, soft skills are people skills. Having great soft skills or people skills can help you become the favorite go-to notary with companies and individuals. This presentation is simple and short. It's in two parts. Part 1 is about the different types of soft skills for dealing with people types. Part 2 will list 6 important soft skills for notaries public to build on, and at the end are 2 important bonus tips. We'll start with soft skills for dealing with people types, for instance, signers, other notaries, hiring entities, and agency contacts. Soft skills for dealing with signers. What kinds of skills do you need, for instance, when dealing with members of the public, your actual signers at the table? Here are skills that may give signers a better experience. When the notary is forthcoming about what is expected from the signer ahead of time. In other words, perhaps the notary quotes a fee, explains what the notary takes in payment at the time of the notarization of the signer's document. For instance, do you take checks, cash, credit cards? The notary may also describe exactly the type of ID that will be required when the notarization takes place. That way, the signer is informed and knows exactly what is expected. Also, at the table or during the notarization, it's beneficial for signers when the notary is knowledgeable and shows that he or she has self-confidence and is able to make the signer feel at ease. Soft skills for dealing with other notaries on forums. Many notaries interact with other notaries on forums. This is a great way to develop a strong network of colleagues. Just remember, however, that other notaries don't have the same life lenses that you do. Don't expect them to agree with you. Never let your feelings get involved. There are people who spend their lives online and do nothing but tear others down. Be respectful, make friends. A few of my notary friends have been my friends for over 10 years. And I've met them on forums, talked with them on the phone, and never laid eyes on their faces. Don't be that person who contributes nothing but criticism. Always add to the conversation and pool of knowledge at the forum. Treat your forum behavior like your audition for jobs or for new assignments from good hiring entities. Be objective and calm always. Keep in mind that most forums are 100% publicly accessible. Being snippy and argumentative doesn't do anyone's reputation any good ever. Ignore the flamers and those who constantly berate others. Report them to the board owner, but avoid engaging with them. And finally, one of the things that all of us could do better at, and that is learning how to agree to disagree. Soft skills for dealing with hiring entities that are difficult. In over a decade of involvement with signing companies and other hiring entities, I can tell you that you'll run into those who are less than professional, and there are those who are the best of the best. When there's a problem with a hiring entity, state it, and don't get into long arguments with anyone in the hiring entity. Chances are they are toxic people to begin with, and you'll get toxic fleas jumping off of the toxic relationship there and being overly involved with them. You'll waste energy and time dealing with them. If they're not paying you and should, give them a deadline, take action after the deadline, or just let it go. The less you say, the better. The more words you toss into the atmosphere, the more that can be used against you. Next, let's discuss great hiring entities and soft skills for developing harmonious relationships with them. When you find a great hiring entity, treat them like gold. Respond to all communications from them according to their requirements. Send handwritten thank you notes to good schedulers. Send greeting cards or emails every holiday. And exercise other positive behaviors that the entity sees as favorable. Now we'll talk a little bit about the agency contacts at the state level, or in some states at the county level, that oversee notaries public. What kind of soft skills will be helpful when dealing with those contacts? Harmonious and effective communication with your notary public administrator's office begins by not dogging them in public forums. That's rule number one. Number two, understand that state agencies are not the easiest to work in. I know that I've had experience somewhat in working in a state agency. I have a great job now, but there's been pockets of time in which I was just a number, and it was not a pleasant, altogether pleasant experience. It's hard sometimes to be an agency worker. You have to remember that as an agency worker, they are public servants, and many of their jobs are thankless. People often work in agency jobs out of a sense of duty. So begin your phone calls and emails to government workers in your notary public administrator's office with a thanks for their services to notaries. You can't believe how much a simple thank you will go a long way to being remembered and thought of well by people who don't get thanked often. Also, at holiday times, drop a note to your notary public administrator's office. It takes 59 cents and a stamp and an inexpensive card just to let them know how much you appreciate them. And just keep in mind that you should always treat the agency staff as respectfully as you enjoy being treated. Next, we're going to move into the second part of this presentation that is about 6 important soft skills for notaries public and 2 bonus tips at the end. Polish your soft skills and stand out from the crowd. Next, we're going to move into the second part of this presentation that is about 6 important soft skills for notaries public and 2 bonus tips at the end. Polish your soft skills and stand out from the crowd. The first 3 that I'll mention, the soft skills that you need are good communication skills, and evidence that you are a team player, you can do teamwork, and that you adapt to change. When communicating, this doesn't mean that you have to be a great speaker or writer. It usually means being able to express yourself objectively, saying what needs to be said without going off into too much detail or not providing enough information. And if you, as a notary public, independent notary signing agent, being part of a team sounds odd. I'm talking now about the teamwork heading. However, the folks that hire you for jobs will appreciate feeling like you want to be part of their team. Just experiment with putting yourself out there as a willing team member and see what happens. You're going to get some good response from that, I think. Finally, there's a degree of merit to those who can assigned to those who can adapt to change. Adapting to change is one of the most difficult challenges that notary signing agents have, especially when dealing with changes that cost them time and money. The best advice here is don't take on the attitude of other signing agents just because you read what they said about it. See what it cost you to implement a change before being unwilling to adapt. Stinking thinking flows plentifully out there on forums and in news groups. So think twice, draw your own opinions, and don't let anyone else tell you how to think about changes in your notary career. Soft skills 4, 5, and 6 are as follows. Notaries public should be able to problem solve, resolve conflicts, and they are always, and it's always necessary to have the willingness to pay close attention to detail. When you are you a good problem solver? Can you figure out how to solve problems on the spot? Develop those skills. For instance, when I first started out as a notary signing agent, one of my go-to problem-solving strategies was do it both ways and find out which one is correct. In other words, from time to time, there would be a form that knew I should do either one way or the other. So what I would do is take an extra copy of the form with me to the signing, do it both ways, and then when I was ready to turn in my work or send it back, I could find out how the hiring entity had wanted it. That really, really saved me in so many instances from being late to an appointment by calling and asking a hiring entity a question about it. And I know that many other signing agents also used that strategy when they were starting out. Secondly, I see on the 5th item, can you resolve conflicts? Well, the best way for me to resolve conflicts is to avoid them. In the notary community and even in the hiring entities, those who hire notaries, there are just naturally confrontational people. Don't respond to them when you post on a forum and get flamed. Just leave those conflicts on their side of the line. Don't drag it over to you. No matter what, the people that flame you or create conflict will always they're excellent at making you look like the ogre, idiot, or meanie. If you have a conflict with the hiring entity, don't let it extend into a long argument. State your case, thank them for their input, agree to disagree, and move on. If there's some problem with non-payment, then you need to pursue legal action at whatever level that requires, or let it go, because sometimes conflict will just eat you alive and take away time that I've never been able to spare. Finally, I mentioned earlier the attention to detail skill. Two things really important. Learn to complete your certificates properly. For instance, don't input your name where the signer's name goes. I know this sounds crazy, but I will later be doing a presentation on doing entity certificates where you have to put in, the title of the person signing and the entity and where they're incorporated and so on and so forth. That was something I really had to give my full attention to learn how to do properly. And I learned it because I handled so many commercial loan packages. So that's one thing I wanted to just tell you, that I'm not talking down to you. I'm telling you something that really was hard for me, is learning to complete certificates properly. And they can get very complicated from time to time. Also, look at ID documents with great care. Don't get so bogged down in whether, you're seeing Lawson or L as the middle name, or even like my mother has problems identifying me with my maiden name as my middle name, and she still wants to use my middle name. So sometimes, legal documents show up with me, it's Brenda, and then my middle name, and then my last name, and I have no ID that shows me as that person with a middle name. So I'm not trying to say don't pay attention to that. I'm just saying the overall examination of the evidence of ID, that is giving that attention to detail at everything that you've got there in front of you. For instance, does that person's age match the birth year on the ID? I mean, are you talking to a 25-year-old who was born in 1960? And those kinds of things can be attention to detail that are important too as notaries public. Just critical thinking and making sure that you've got, the right person in front of you. Could be sometimes helpful than focusing on whether or not junior or senior is on the driver's license and the documents, that sort of thing. Finally, we're moving to the very last slide, or almost the last slide. I said almost the last slide because the last slide is actually a couple of links to resources that I used to prepare this presentation. Okay, bonus, 2 big tips for advancing your notary soft skills. If you'll look over there on the right in the illustration, or this image I have input there, I have read so many times where notaries will say on a forum, I did a notary for a disabled man. There's 2 things wrong with that. First of all, it's better to always say man with disabilities or person with disabilities. Labeling persons with disabilities is something that notaries public should be very careful to learn. It's a kindness, and it is a respectfulness that should be instilled in all notaries, that just because a person has a disability does not make them a disabled person. So a better way to say this is person with disabilities. Now, second thing is notaries don't do a notary. You just, that a notary is a person. And so you know what it sounds like if you say, I did a notary. Well, okay. Well, what we do, notaries don't do a notary. They don't have a notary, meaning they have a notarial commission. They either perform notarial services, perform a notary act, complete a notary act or a notarial service. But it's just very, we never do notaries. And we don't have notaries. That's just an incorrect, abusive use of the term notary. So I provided notary services for a man with disabilities is a much better way to say that first sentence that is wrong on so many levels. I hope this presentation is helpful to you and that you'll keep reading my blog, Notaries and notarynews.com. And if you're a Texas notary and want to be a part of a directory of other Texas notary professionals, please visit the link on the last slide. Thank you.